Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Achieving Accessibility webinar. My name is Paul Burns, and I am the Coordinator of Club Development with Ontario Soccer, and I will be narrating the webinar today. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you to a number of people who have worked on creating and implementing the Achieving Accessibility Guide. First, I would like to thank the Working Committee, who started the grant process and put all the information together. I'd like to thank the Ontario Soccer staff for the design of the guide and implementation of the guide out into the soccer community. I'd like to thank the Accessibility Directorate of Ontario's staff, Minister McCharles, for her support and speaking at the 2017 Ontario Soccer Summit. This webinar has been designed to describe the details of the new Achieving Accessibility Guide and provide information to clubs who are planning on creating accessible soccer programming. I'd also like to mention that there are already 20 clubs within Ontario who have accessible soccer program in place, as well as many others who incorporate all players into their programming. Ontario Soccer believes that the intention of any accessible soccer program should focus on providing an opportunity for players in their own community to discover soccer, develop skills, and build friendships as part of a team. In 2005, the Government of Ontario passed the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Its goal is to make Ontario accessible by 2025 by creating and enforcing accessibility standards. These standards are rules that businesses and organizations in Ontario must follow to identify, remove, and prevent barriers so that people with disabilities will have more opportunities to participate in everyday life. Standards address key areas of daily life such as customer service, information, communications, and employment. Several accessibility standards are contained in one regulation under the AODA, called the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation, also known as IASR, which is now law. There are 5 distinct standards that have requirements under each. Please go to ontario.ca/accessibility to find out specific requirements based on your organization size. The 5 requirements are information and communication, employment, design of public spaces, customer service, and transportation. It's also important for clubs and academies to understand that nonprofit organizations are required to submit a compliance report by December 31st, 2017. There are 3 areas that clubs need to be aware of when it comes to club and academy compliance. Number 1 is update your accessible customer service policy and any related documentation. It is best to practice to have a hard copy to communicate the details more effectively and to ensure that guidelines are followed. Second is all employees and volunteers should receive basic training on accessible customer service. And third, ensure that your accessible customer service policies and procedures are enforced and employees use their training. Here are some key areas for when starting a program. First is player recruitment. You can recruit players from inside your organization or from another organization within the community, such as other sports groups, maybe another municipality, or other private sports organizations. It is also very important to recruit the right coach for your program. Again, this can be done within your organization, or you can go out into the community to find a coach for this program. You may need to find a specific coach who has experience or training for players with with accessible needs. It is important that you create and implement a budget for your program. It's important that you have a registration process. This may be online or in person, but it's very important to have this registration information available to the players and parents. Understand and know that you have the correct insurance in place. This could be for developing new programming, but also for any facilities that you may use. Choose an accessible facility or location, one that has accessible parking and that is safe for all of your players to use. Make sure you have the right equipment in place, or you purchase the right equipment or specific equipment that is needed for this program. And have uniforms for your players, volunteers, coaches, anyone else who is involved in the program. When developing a program, there are special materials that you will need in order to be successful. One is a season plan. So this can have your goals and objectives for the season for that specific program, which may include session or practice plans for each week. This is detailed information you can give to your coaches and volunteers of drills and activities that they can run each week of the program. It's very important that you have adapted equipment, tools, and devices for each week and set up properly prior to every player of all the coaches showing up. Volunteers are crucial to the success of an accessible soccer program, as well as every other soccer program. Make sure that you have a recruitment and retention strategy, you have the right training in place, and you have identification for these volunteers. That could be name tags or specific uniforms. Like in every other program, it is important that you have the right education or training materials available to your volunteers or your staff to have a successful, accessible soccer program. Make sure you have the right educational materials available to them. This could include policies and procedures of your club and academy, but also policies and procedures for external organizations, whether you're working with another group or you're using a facility that is not your own. Volunteer and training is important. Make sure they understand what their roles and responsibilities are, as well as the needs of each player. Communication is key. Communication in different formats is very important. Make sure it's accessible. So that means having recordings, having visuals, having audios, recordings available for each player, and also having a communication strategy so you understand when and how you communicate with your potential players and volunteers. Equipment setup is key. Make sure you have the right equipment, that it's set up properly prior to each practice or game. Understand the right emergency procedures. So this could be club, academy, or organization procedures, but also emergency procedures for any facilities that you are using for your program. And as mentioned before, list all of the resources available for your volunteers, for your players, for your parents to access at any time. There are many resources available to clubs and academies. First would be Ontario Soccer. Please go to ontariosoccer.net and you can read about the information that we have available. You can also download the Achieving Accessibility Guide. On a national level, you can go to the CNIB, Variety Village, or the Cerebral Palsy Association. Two provincial organizations that you can go to are Autism Ontario, as well as Parasport Ontario. At a regional or local level, you can look at the likes of Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab Hospital, Sick Kids Learning Institute, Grandview Durham, Vulnerability Center in Pickering. So the Achieving Accessibility Guide will help build an accessible soccer program within your club or academy while ensuring that your club or academy as a whole is compliant and understanding of the requirements under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So this guide, as mentioned before, can be found at ontariosoccer.net. Thank you all for listening today. I hope that you've enjoyed the webinar, and if you have any other questions or in regards to the webinar today or the Achieving Accessibility Guide, please contact me at the information shown here. Thank you all again for listening. Hope you have a great day, and best of luck in the season to come.